pastor's nonchalant announcement of his wife's death at a Sunday service garnered national media attention. As more details of his life became public, a harrowing picture emerged of what his now deceased wife endured during her life. With the feds and local law enforcement supposedly on the case, will her estranged husband face legal consequences for his prior actions? This week's episode is Mica Miller, The Case So Far, Part 2. Sinisterhood. Well, much like the Murdaugh case, which we're not the only ones comparing this to that, we've had to separate this into 3 parts, which, again, with Murdaugh, we're like, it'll only be 2. And then the perpetrator starts doing wacky stuff in the media we're like, this has to have its whole own episode. And
I think that might have even been a 4-parter.
I think, yeah, or we maybe did. I think we did like 2 or 3 updates on minisodes as well. But I remember initially we were only going to do 2, and then the whole stuff about Cousin Eddie all came out. It happened while we were covering it. So similar to this case as it is unfolding, part 3 is going to be more JP's rebuttal because he's been yapping on the TikTok.
You know what he loves? Himself. A live stream.
Yeah.
He loves to get loose on a live stream, and like we said in the last episode, you're just going to hang yourself. But I mean, like, I don't know if he has he does have a lawyer.
Lawyer.
His lawyer is not telling him, shut the fuck up and stop going live on TikTok all the time. Or if he is, he's just saying, I'm going to do whatever I want anyways.
Yeah, right. It's like, please stop talking. And then your client does whatever they want. That's what I was thinking is if he does have a defense attorney, it's just like, just crack another beer, like, glug, glug, glug. Like, cause I mean, you're like, what do I even do? My client is buck wild. So, and I think part 3 will be all the crimes we think we've spotted in this. But this episode is the biggest crime of all. And that is the day that Micah died that kind of got everybody on this case.
Yeah, so much like the last episode, all of the content warnings, there's a lot of discussion about suicide, domestic violence, pretty much everything.
Sexual abuse, child sexual abuse, yes. So he knows no bounds is what we're noticing here.
He does not know. He's a huge sack of shit, I'll tell you that. And every time I hear him talk, I hate him a little bit more, which every day I'm like, didn't think I could hate you anymore. And then he proves me wrong.
Truly. I was on my run yesterday listening to Chapel Roan, and she's got a song called My Kink is Karma. And she's like, I think it's so hot when you crash your car, when you ruin your life, when you like all of this is going to happen to you by your own hand and your own you're going to drive yourself crazy. You're going to break your own heart. And I was like, this makes me think of JP Miller a little bit. Like having just like done a bunch of research and worked on the outline. I'm like, you can't really leave work behind. I'm like, I'm going to relax and not think about this. Constantly. I think we both do cases like this, especially where there's an outstanding need for justice. I think we don't stop thinking about it.
No, this is one that definitely, I already can tell is going to be one that when people ask us, what are the cases that stick with you the most? This is definitely up there because it's just, man, I watched so many hours of unedited footage, security footage of her last day, and it is rough to see the pain on her face, and we'll get to it, but just in this day and age with technology, we're kind of afforded this voyeuristic glimpse into people's lives that otherwise we wouldn't, and no one knows at the time, perhaps, that this is going to be their last day. But then in hindsight, when you go back looking at it, just to see the pain and, a lot of questions come up, and it's like, well, are we putting suspicion on these people because of the circumstances? Are they just innocent bystanders? It just becomes a whole web sleuth where everyone gets involved. And this case has also reminded me a lot of Gabby Petito, which interestingly enough, when I was reading a bunch of stuff last night, like other articles that suggest within that article was about her. And I'm like, well, yeah, there are a lot of parallels here with, abuse and then denial of what happened. So that one sticks with me. This one sticks with me. And just kind of like piecing together people's last days is always something that's a really hard thing to stomach.
Oh, certainly. And the banality of it, of, getting gas, getting a drink and stuff, which we'll get into. But it makes me think of Peggy Clinky's case, and we talked about it last time. And the parallels are gut-wrenching that it is still going on this many years later. But we hope we can move the needle a little bit to get everybody listening. If there's a petition to sign, something in your own town, we'll give you some calls to action at the end. But until then, we're going to get you set up with all the facts of this final day.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Christy.
I'm Heather.
And let's get into it. Pastor John Paul Miller was served with divorce papers on April 25th, 2024. That same week, according to her sister, Micah made a report to the IRS about JP and the church's financial dealings. Micah had previously told at least one coworker at the restaurant where she worked that she was confused why the church went through multiple accountants in a short time span of only 2 years. On Friday, April 26, Micah paid $232 in taxes on her 2019 silver Honda Accord with license plate WUP747. The taxes had been due in December, but Micah was behind, according to texts that she had sent. That same day, Micah worked her shift as a server at J. Peter's restaurant. She was scheduled to return the next day, Saturday, April 27th, to work from noon until business slowed down. Micah also made plans to see her friends at her new church on Sunday, April 28th. She would never make it to her shift or the service.
And I think the future plans is something that her family continues to point at, not just, I'm going to meet you for lunch after church. I'm going to see you at church. I'll see you at work. She had a haircut scheduled the next week. She went and paid the taxes from before and was like, she had texted Charlotte this long thing that was like, I cannot wait to get a fresh start. This is finally my time.
She had told her dad, I think I need to get a gun for protection. She had, the day of, fills up her car with gas. Like, why would you do those things if you knew that you were about to end your life? All of these things of looking towards the future. And many of her friends pointed out because she was, as they said, quote, such a godly woman, like she just wouldn't do that. It was against what, her religion believed in. So no one in her life, apart from JP and his asshole father, Wayne, has ever said, we think that she was suicidal.
Yeah, she talked about when on stage I believe it's in Africa, that she had a suicide attempt in the past. And because of that, she's like, I will always fall back on God. Of course we can't know the intimate details of someone's inner workings. But when you look at the evidence around, I think as a law enforcement professional, if I showed up, I would say like, oh, let me talk to some friends and family before just going, well, definitely it was this.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen that clip too of her talking in Kenya, and again, it involves a gun, and she said that the bullet got stuck in the chamber and, she was afforded a second chance. And she says that, so I'm going to take it at her word. Knowing how much we know about the emotional and psychological abuse that she has gone through with JP, I do question how much of that story might be hers.
Yeah, and or why was the gun to her head?
Yeah, and we've given a lot of content warnings, so I think that this would fall under that, but just statistics and studies show that that's typically not how women choose to end their life. Yeah. So the fact that she would do it twice, especially if the first time she knew how it worked out, to go back to that well for the second time seems a little odd to me.
Yes, and especially given the correspondence she had with friends, family, and then her diaries, which her attorney has in her possession.
Yeah. On April 27th, Ring doorbell footage shows Micah leaving the residence she shared with her friend on Margarita Drive in Myrtle Beach at 10:13 a.m. Nearly 45 minutes later, at 11 a.m., footage captures Micah returning. 38 minutes later, Micah leaves the apartment again, having appeared to have changed clothes for her work shift at J. Peters. Micah can be seen wearing a long-sleeve tee under her J. Peters uniform. Coworkers stated she did this often to hide bruises on her arms. On the ring footage, Micah is holding her cell phone, which can be heard playing Necessary Endings, a sermon by Dr. Henry Cloud about leaving toxic relationships.
And the first time she leaves and comes back, she has like a food bag and like an iced coffee looking thing in her hand. She's got like a sweatshirt on that says like Aloha, and her hair's in a ponytail. So it's, you're out running your morning errands before you have to work at noon. Like, oh, I'm going to get coffee and breakfast, come back. And then as she's leaving, this sermon's like, hear the birds chirping, like turn towards a new day. It's such a hopeful, like leave the past behind kind of a sermon to be, listening to, again, if that's the plan, and dressed in your work clothes. And she had braided her hair. It went from a ponytail to a braid, which as a server, you want to keep your hair out of your face. So it's all the markers of I'm going to work.
Yeah, I'm headed to work. And her family and friends pointed also to the sermon being another reason, like she was looking forward to the future. The sermon is all about like leaving toxic relationships behind, turning over a new leaf, which are all indications. And we knew she had filed for divorce, that this was her plan to, start her life anew.
Yeah, and I mean, JP had been served on the 25th around 5 p.m., so then the 26th would be like 24 hours. So she's like less than 48 hours from serving this divorce and is like, it's happening, and paid $5,000 to her attorney and didn't call off work.
Right. No, she couldn't. She needed the money. I mean, she was struggling financially, which just even that, like seeing her leaving for work, and because she doesn't know that the whole nation is going to watch this ring footage. And when you see people in those vulnerable moments when they're by themselves, and you can just see in her eyes and on her face, like all the pain that she's going through. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's because she knew what she was going to do. I would argue it's because she's been through 15 years of pure hell, and it's kind of finally culminated in like, no, we're shutting it down. This is it, which is also statistics and studies will show in domestic violence, leaving is the most dangerous time for victims. Yeah. So, she's been in just like this permanent state of tension and fight or flight. I mean, you can see in her body language, the way she holds herself and walks, that she's very like head on a swivel, aware of what's going on around her and stuff. And that's exhausting, like physically, emotionally, spiritually. She just looks drained. She looks like she is just tired and sad, and I get it. I mean, I would be too, and it's really hard to be like, man, now she's got to go work a fucking 10-hour shift as a server because she needs the money, and she's sharing an apartment with an 87-year-old woman, a former church member. I mean, she's a young woman. Like, all of these things that like aren't typical for women her age, She's just not, because of all the things she's endured, she's at a different point in her life, which is okay, that everyone walks their own path, but hers was forced upon her and was full of violence.
Yeah, and it's a good point. It was her entire adult life. I mean, age 14 to when she died, it was stolen from her by a controlling person. And you couldn't have her dog with her, at that apartment. Yeah. You choose to leave. Well, part of leaving is like, you can't take that pet with you, So you're right that the exhaustion and she's only 30, but she sort of walks with this like mature resolve that it's like, you should just be able to be like, I'm 30, I just turned 30, whatever. But instead it's like, we'll have to go work this job because my multimillionaire husband cut me off financially and coerced me into signing these agreements that signed away my rights.
Yeah. Surveillance footage shows Micah enter Dick's pawn shop at 1852 Mr. Joe White Avenue in Myrtle Beach at 12:12 p.m. While there, she can be clearly seen purchasing a handgun. At 12:34, Micah can be seen leaving the pawn shop. The black Honda Accord Micah had borrowed from her roommate can be seen pulling into 41 Grocery and Grill on Highway 41 in Mullins at 1:06 p.m. After purchasing gas and a drink, Micah is seen leaving in the car at 1:35 p.m. At 2:54, Micah makes a call to 911, seemingly unaware of her location, but clearly in distress.
And this is kind of where it takes a turn. If she's supposed to be at work at 12, she hits the pawn shop by 12:12. There's a ton of footage. There's a parking lot footage. There's an entryway. There's one register she's at, another register she's at. And it's mostly just people like, you see a family come in and pawn like an item, a dad with a kid, a lady with the TV. There's two guys people were pointing at. They look like they're just browsing. I would say one of them is lingering near her more. And I would say just, is that one of the PIs JP admitted to hiring?
True. Could be.
Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, there's speculation about a couple of times in the different security footage captured at the gas station, at the pawn shop, of a truck. There is a black truck that can be seen in both of those. Whether it's the same truck, it's impossible for me to tell, but it did stick out to me. And there are people, of course, online, like the people lingering around there, the people that ended up doing it and stuff. And then there's the other camp that's like, they could have just been shopping. So let's not jump to conclusions and like drag these people whose faces are very visible and, in
public footage. Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to find people nowadays. So, but at the same time, as investigators, I think you got to investigate everything. And if that just means calling somebody in and questioning them and getting like, oh, okay, cool, we can clear you, then there's no harm in that. I'd rather be safe than sorry.
Well, and the one guy is driving a van and people are like, he's driving a van. Well, when he gets out and walks in, he's got paint all over his pants. Yeah. So to me, I'd be like, it's not zebras. If you hear clomping in the forest, it's probably, it's like, just because he has a van doesn't mean he's evil. He got out, he has paint on him. There's another gentleman that pulls up and like people were like, well, he goes in one area and sort of waits for her. But again, it could just be a weird browsing pattern or that's what the FBI is involved for, is you can see what type of vehicle that man drives. You see what he looks like, very clear picture of his face. They'll find him in about 2 seconds, as we discovered on True Crime Headlines. They can run your face rightly or wrongly through, software that'll find you versus your driver's license photo or whatever. So I'm sure they'll get talked to pretty quick.
Yeah. The Honda Accord she's driving is also, at one point on the highway, it was photographed as well by cameras. Now, what's really interesting, and we'll post it in the show notes because Grizzly True Crime on YouTube did the Lord's work by like putting together all of the unedited raw footage and showing also Google Maps and really like, clicking down to where like you can see the surrounding areas and stuff around it. But when you look at the map of where she left her apartment, and then if she was going to keep going to J. Peters, the pawn shop is on the way. So it makes sense she could stop off there and then keep heading to work. But when she leaves the pawn shop, she doesn't keep going east.
Straight, yeah.
To where her job would be. She starts going north. Toward, very, very far out of the way. And this is where I have some theories, but this is where I think a lot of questions are going to come up. When there's a trial and stuff of just like, well, how could someone have forced her to start driving a different direction?
Yeah, or what would have lured her to drive that direction or, caused her to go that way. No, I think you're right, and especially given that she's wearing the long-sleeve tee with the J. Peters shirt in the ring footage, and we see her hands, and there's no bruises or anything on her hands, and then we see at the Dick's Pawn Shop, there's no bruises on her hands. We'll hear why that's relevant here in a minute.
Also, with her hands in the pawn shop, people are saying, I don't even think that's her. If you zoom in, you can't see the cross tattoo she has on her hand. To that, I would say that footage is so grainy. Sometimes it doesn't pick stuff up. And I was watching this whole like technology breakdown of it, of how like sometimes when the resolution isn't high enough, like stuff like that just doesn't get picked up. Also, sometimes depending on your job, you have to cover up tattoos. True. So,
maybe she put makeup.
Yeah, if she's like a server and they don't want hand tattoos, she might have to cover it up. That's just speculation, but I think it would be ridiculous to say that the person in the pawn shop footage is not her.
I would agree, because it's not like she went to McDonald's and got a Happy Meal. She went to buy a gun. There was background. 20 minutes of that is her filling out papers, signing papers. They check her ID. They check her they check her credit card when she pays, or debit card when she pays. So to me, it's ridiculous to go, well, that's not her at the pawn shop, because there's like 6 workers that all like talked to her, interacted with her, took her ID. And I believe that she had filled out something before, because it takes, I don't know, but some of the paperwork takes longer. But or she already had a concealed carry, again, which they would check, and you would check against the physical person in the store.
Yeah, people pointed out that it did appear she had been to this pawn shop before, because when she walks in, she walks straight to the counter, and the guns are kept behind the counter. So it seems like she may have already decided what she wanted. A lot of people are asking too, if she had been committed to a mental institution, why was she allowed to get a handgun? And from my understanding, it is up to the institution to report that to the police for records. And I guess they just didn't.
Or if she was only on a 48-hour hold, you can get picked up for anything. Somebody could call and go, Heather's crazy, go pick her up. And I could get picked up. I get evaluated for 48 hours, and they go, you have your regular issues, but, there's nothing here that makes you a danger to yourself or others. It is, especially a state like South Carolina, which leans more conservative, pro Second Amendment. I imagine it is, you're not immediately going to make that phone call. Well, she got, we had her on a 48-hour hold, especially if the 48-hour hold, they let her go. She wasn't, it's not like they kept her for, 6 weeks because she was so ill. It's just she was involuntarily committed because her husband ambushed her in a Walmart parking lot and stole her car right after. So perhaps the hospital's like, she's fine. She's treated. She's taking her medicine. This is not a reportable thing. Yeah.
And her sister said that they later found out one of the nurses there told her, like, I'm sorry, this wasn't necessary. We just did it because he said that we needed to. So if you know that might be another reason. And you might also be like, I think she's being abused, and that's why she was committed. And we see physical evidence of that. And so, it's a dichotomy, because we do want regulations for guns to be in place for things like this. At the same time, we don't want that being used against someone who's trying to seek protection for themselves against their abuser. So it is a very, sticky situation.
Yeah, it's a fine line to walk, for real, because you don't want somebody who is a danger to themselves or others to have access to a weapon, but you also don't want an abused woman who needs access to a weapon for protection and have her mental health weaponized against her, not be able to get that, for real.
Absolutely.
And you're right. I think that her going to the gas station, people said, oh, it's weird. She went in to get a drink and then came out, and then she got gas. And then I'm like, we go to truck stops all the time. If you watched our behavior and how we walk around, it's that, you know what I mean? Like, what we do makes sense to us. What she did made sense to her. It didn't strike me as she was looking over her shoulder, she was being followed. A car whips in and pulls in and waits and then whips off, and another truck kind of whips in and then comes back around. But again, it's like, if you look at the roads around there, they're kind of like one-way farm to market roads in every direction.
People are hauling ass down those roads too.
Real fast.
And it's a very busy gas station. There's a lot of hustle and bustle going on and stuff. It's in a very rural area. There's a guy with a tractor and stuff. So, I mean, I was watching it with a discerning eye, and there is another black truck that appears, and there is also a black truck in some of the other videos too. She parks kind of around the side at first, and then that Grizzly True Crime doing the Google Maps, you can tell that on the other side, where the footage that has been released to the public, you don't really see, there's a porta potty there. So people think she parked there, went in, got a drink, got something, and then went to the bathroom and then pulled through to get gas. Again, if you know that you're about to go kill yourself, why are you going to stop and get gas?
Yeah, it's not a time to fill up.
Unless you needed gas to get to where you're going. I mean, that is true too. And it was also her roommate's car, so maybe she was helping her out. just playing devil's advocate a
Yeah.
bit, but it's all pretty sus. Yeah.
No, and I would like to see police pull all cell phone pings from the pawn shop and all cell phone pings from the gas station and go, well, Micah's phone was at both places. Was anyone else's phone at both places? Because then you don't have to speculate, well, whose truck was that? It's like, oh, well, this cell phone. And that's the thing. I wonder if anybody involved, not her. I mean, if there was I don't know, estranged spouse perhaps that was trying to do this, hiring a PI or following themselves. It's like, do you not realize even if you have a burner phone, they'll just figure out, hey, this burner phone tracked the exact same distance. Like there's no way for us to be completely untraceable. So I imagine the FBI is probably already looking at all that.
I hope so. When the 911 operator answers the call and asks for the address of the emergency, there is a long pause before Micah eventually replies,
Sorry, are you able to trace the location of my phone?
During this pause, what appears to be a male voice can be heard in the background. Digital enhancements of the audio have produced mixed results. Some believe the unknown male says,
Eyes forward.
just before Micah answers the dispatcher. Others that have listened believe the male voice is on the dispatcher's end, possibly a male coworker saying something about
My folder.
Still, others claim they hear the voice say her name.
Mica Miller.
It does sound like there is a male voice. I've listened to this so many times. I originally thought it said eyes forward. I do think also because it is quiet and at this point she's at a park and there's no sounds of birds or people. I think she's in a car at this point.
Yeah, I was confused of why every interview you hear from people from that area, it's just tweet, 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 tweet. There's so many birds and and it sounds like you're at a state park versus the call is like she's in a phone booth or a car or something. Yeah. And you're right. My folder, I wish that, and perhaps it exists and it hasn't been released to the public. There's two, like when you and I record the show on Zencaster, there's a Christy track and a Heather track. I wish that we could say this is the caller track and the dispatcher track and then say, oh, okay, well, the my folder or Mica Miller or whatever came through on the dispatcher side versus her side. That's just something we don't have right now. So it's all just audio pareidolia. How do you say it? Audio.
I say pareidolia.
Audio pareidolia. Yeah.
Pareidolia. I say it in the Full Moon Energy show about 16 times, and somehow right now I can't say it correctly. Pareidolia.
No, but it does. But it's where your brain kind of tries to make sense of it, and you just hearing that. It's like if somebody's telling you, make this call, I got a gun to your head, that's something you would say.
Yeah. It did. The eyes forward did make sense to me. Attempting to locate Micah, the operator asks her,
let me see. You don't know where you are?
After another pause, Micah answers,
A national park.
The operator then asks what number Micah is calling from, which Micah provides. When the dispatcher asks Micah,
Where's the park located at?
Micah sounds unsure, answering,
In Fairbluff?
As the dispatcher continues to search for Micah's location, Micah tells her,
I have my location on, I think, on my phone.
After another long pause, Micah continues,
And my phone is on. I just did share my location. Before she says Fairbluff, I also heard what sounds like someone saying Fairbluff very quietly in the background. Some people who have analyzed it, a former 911 dispatcher said, that could be a colleague sitting next to the other dispatcher going, oh, look, they're in Fairbluff. Just kind of going, oh, it's Fairbluff. Alternatively, if she was brought to a place she was unfamiliar with and was being forced to make a call and didn't know where the fuck she's at on speakerphone going, because she echoes once or twice, which to me indicates she was on speakerphone, which why? Unless other people were listening.
I did notice an echo, but it didn't occur to me that she could have been on speakerphone.
My phone does that when I'm on speakerphone. It'll echo back to somebody, or if somebody's talking to you. Sometimes there's like a little malfunction and iPhones will echo back. So if you're on speakerphone, it's like, where are you? And she's like, and someone's like, Fairbluff. And then she goes, in Fairbluff?
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing that's kind of odd is her Google history on her phone from that day does show that she Googled twice national parks near me.
I want so much more information from her phone than the Robeson County Sheriff released. All they released is a single screenshot that she searched those two things. My thing is, out of nowhere, you wake up in the morning and you start searching that. That's the only thing you searched? I doubt it. Like, what else did she search? What else did she type? I want like a forensic accounting of the phone, which I'm sure the FBI is getting right now, especially her family has it. You know, her family is going to get it after the law enforcement's done. So maybe they can do their own independent analysis on it. But it seems strange that they're like, that's all she searched. Like, really? That's it? National park near me? Lumber River is not a national park. It's a state park. So...
Oh, yeah, that's true, too.
Also, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would split hairs about that as much as I don't know if they've released that. I hadn't heard that was the only thing she had searched. I had just heard she did search that. If that is the only thing, yeah, that's super sus. I also think... people can take people's phones and do stuff with them or
have access on a different device logged in. But I was going to say, I don't think it was the only thing she searched. It is the only thing Robeson County has revealed that she searched.
Okay.
Which I'm like, because it fits their narrative.
Yes. They are definitely pushing the narrative that this was a suicide. The dispatcher informs Micah that it doesn't appear that she is in Robeson County and asks her,
"Are you at the Lumber River State Park?"
Quicker than her previous replies, Micah answers,
"Yes, that's where I am."
It's at this point in the call, the dispatcher finally says to Micah,
"Okay, tell me what's happened."
A somber-sounding Micah replies,
I'm about to kill myself, and I just want my family to know where to find me."
The dispatcher's tone appears to soften as she says,
"Okay, ma'am, just listen to what I'm saying, okay? Let me make sure I got the exact location where you're at, okay? Just 1 minute."
So there's been a lot of criticism about this dispatcher online because people are like, why did it take so long for her to ask what was going on? Why didn't she ask that right at the top? Why didn't she do more intervention when she said, I'm about to go kill myself? And to that, I would say, until you walk a mile in a dispatcher's shoes, I can't answer that. You can hear them doing stuff and knowing what they're trained on. I think she is dispatching police to her area. She's just trying to figure out exactly where she is. Now, I will say, once she said, I'm about to kill myself, I feel like there maybe should have been something to address that said, but unfortunately, the call ends before much can be said. And the dispatcher does try to call her back several times, and there's no answer.
Yeah, initially when she calls, it kind of sounds like it could be a person just lost in a state park.
Yeah.
You know, she's like, "Can you tell me where I'm at?" And it's like, "Oh, you must be lost. Where are you?"
Yeah.
So I don't fault her for saying, "Okay, well, what's the problem?" Because at first she just says, "Can you track me? I want to know where I am." Mm-hmm. But and when she does say, "I'm about to go kill myself," I just took the dispatcher's tone as saying, "Okay, well, just listen real quick. Let me just make sure," because I don't know about any training. I'm sure we have dispatchers that listen to the show. I would love y'all's input if you want to email us. But I wonder what your training says other than try to delay them hanging up. You know, I don't know what training of, okay, well, you have to talk them off the proverbial ledge. I don't know if that's frowned upon. You're supposed to do it. You're not. I don't know. But she does, to me, sounded like she was like, "Oh, well, I'm going to try to drag this out a little bit more. I'm going to try to keep her on the line with me." Well, ma'am, I don't really know where you are. So if you really want me to know, like, stay on the line, perhaps thinking if I can keep her on the line, officers can get to her. But being as far out as she was, that wasn't going to happen. But you can't know that in that moment. Like you said, till you walk a mile in their shoes. Sinisterhood will be right back. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. I can't believe it's 6 months into the year, but I am so happy that late last year I was like, I'm going to get on a more regular schedule with my therapy. And now I was able to not only get on a schedule, but also readapt to a schedule when I've gotten off. Because I used to be like, oh, well, I'm off my schedule. Now everything's over. That's called all or nothing thinking, which my therapist ironically helped me with.
Great. Yeah, but that's true. We think that
Oh, it's over.
Well, we missed a day. Well, and then it's like a slippery slope of like, well, then I can miss next week. I already missed last week, and then you're totally off your game.
And then all of a sudden it's June, and you're like, where have I been?
Right? When life goes fast, it's important to take a moment to celebrate your wins and make adjustments for the rest of the year.
Therapy can help you take stock of your progress and set achievable goals for the next 6 months. That's something I love about my BetterHelp therapist is she asked me like, how's it going? What do you want to do? What are you at right now? And really helps me assess where I'm at. And I feel like I found somebody I can really connect with, which was all through BetterHelp.
You speak very highly of her, and
I love her.
You talk all the time about how much lighter and happier and healthier you feel. So
I do.
I love BetterHelp because you love BetterHelp and BetterHelp loves you and it helped you. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try.
BetterHelp is convenient, flexible, affordable, and entirely online. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge.
Take a moment. Visit BetterHelp.com/sinister today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/sinister.
Sinisterhood will be right back.
The 911 call that was initially made public soon ends after the dispatcher's request, with Micah never replying. However, Micah's father, Michael Francis, told Law and Crime Network that he heard the full, unedited version of the call. According to Michael, the call did not end at that point. Rather, screaming and what sounds like an altercation can be heard, as well as what again sounds like a man's voice. Some have also speculated that the entire 911 call was fabricated using AI.
I listened to the part that Michael Francis referenced, and the argument is that it sounds like someone says, grab her arm, get set, and there is a scream. And he says a commotion, and I would agree with that. And he just says it sounds like a fight, which I would agree with as well.
It was hard for me to really hear it. It was very distorted sounding to me. So it was kind of hard for me to make out what exactly was going on. But if there is someone saying, grab her, that would imply there's at least 3 people there now. Micah and 2 other people.
Yeah. Grab her arm. It sounds like it was not just her out there by herself at the very least. And given that instruction, her and 2 others. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think there were 2 other people with her, but that's not to say that the call didn't end there and there was some kind of altercation and something said.
Or one other person with her, and it's not grab her arm, it's give me your arm, whatever. We something. Can't hear it. But it's weird that there's a much deeper, distinctly different than Micah or the female dispatcher voice, and then a weird, like a scream, yelp sound. Mm-hmm. And the AI thing is easy. It takes 3 seconds of your voice to make any kind of thing. Like, we're hosts. If anybody ever calls and pretends to be me, it's not me. Because there's so much. Know? There's a code word. But for real, it takes like 2 seconds of someone's voice. There was plenty of her voice available in sermons and chats and whatever, videos you take at home.
Yep. And I've read, don't know for sure, that an attorney that JP had been using was quite skilled with AI.
And familiar with it. And also to the extent that last part is kind of weird, a 911 operator on TikTok kind of listened to it, and she said, the rest of it, the Mica Miller, my folder at the beginning, she said, that sort of sounds like a dispatch operations, just the cadence that everyone speaks. And she said, even the Fair Bluff part, she said that sort of sounds like the cadence that a 911 dispatch center would sound like. But that last part, she said, that doesn't sound like anything that would happen in the office. I mean, unless there just so happens to be, your coworker gets into a fist fight behind you while you're on this call. It seems less likely. She's like, the rest of it, you could maybe say, you're mishearing that. But the weird scream at the end is like that. It's not saying, oh, that's absolutely her being attacked. It's just that doesn't really comport with what normally sounds like.
Yeah, the audio is pretty distorted. It definitely sounds like there's some kind of yell at some point. The video I saw, the woman is from Tough Topic is kind of saying like, oh, they're saying like, get her arm, help. I don't necessarily hear that. It sounds too distorted for me to make that out. There's something going on though. And then there's definitely like a yell of some sort. It doesn't sound like Micah, but it sounds like something odd was happening.
It's like that 911 operator, the dispatcher said, it doesn't comport with like what a normal operation center you would hear. It's on Micah's end.
Yeah. Robeson County deputies were dispatched to the Lumber River State Park at 3:03 p.m. At 3:31, they arrived and began searching the area on foot and by air using drones. While searching, police were approached by 55-year-old fisherman Johnny Jacobs. Jacobs told police that he had been fishing nearby when he heard faint crying, but that he was unable to see anyone because of all the trees. According to Jacobs, the crying lasted approximately 2 minutes. Then, a shot rang out, followed by silence. Fearing something tragic had happened, Jacobs maneuvered his boat through the marshy area to a clearing where he saw a fanny pack, cell phone, and sunglasses laying on the bank, approximately 2 feet from the water. Jacobs grabbed the fanny pack, later telling News Nation,
I don't know why I grabbed it. I just grabbed it. Didn't ever look at it or nothing. I got out and I looked around because there was a clearing on the left and the right. And I looked around because I felt like something was wrong, but I never seen nothing. I just took the stuff, put it in my boat, and went back to the landing.
Back in his boat, Jacobs looked in the bag. Inside was Micah's driver's license, bank card, car keys, $500 in cash, and a small Bible. Jacobs said upon this discovery, he promptly turned over the items to the police on the scene, who told him they were there investigating a 911 call.
Which, yeah, he said, I walked over and said, do y'all know who Mica Miller is? Because by then he'd seen her driver's license, and they said, yes, do you know who Mica Miller is? And then he said, well, I found all this, which I'm sure as the deputies were looking for her body was helpful to go, okay, well, where did you find it?
Yeah. He does an interview with News Nation and takes Rich McHugh down to the air, like out on his boat, and he's showing him. And, it looks like swamplands. Pretty swamplands, but he's like, now the water is much higher than it was then, but his boat, he says, is able to get into like 3 inches of water, but he was fishing. Here's from the left side crying. There's a bunch of trees and water and stuff, so he can't see through it. But then he hears the gunshot, and he said he thought, oh my God, the crying stopped. Something terrible's happened. So he had to like maneuver his way back in there. It wasn't like an easy thing to get in there. But that when he did get in there, there was a clear walking path leading from where Micah's car had been parked down to where her belongings were found. And I would say to that, if you're calling to say, I want my family to be able to find my body and know where I am, why would you then walk into a swampy, marshy area to do this where it's going to be more difficult for them to find you?
It's also a restricted area. I went to the trail, all trails maps, and you can see the pin where she was found, and you can see the trails where you're supposed to stay on the trails and like what's printed from the state park. This is your trail. And she walked off of the trail into an area that's restricted for rangers only. I've heard her family say she would have had to come through waist-high water at one point in the walking area to get where she was. So again, it is strange that it was, if you want to get pinged or whatever, why it was and be found, it was so remote and so far back there. And where he found her things on the shoreline, I believe was 40 meters from where eventually her body was found, which is how he didn't see her. He only saw her things.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, why were her things left on the bank, 2 feet from the water's edge, and then she was 40 meters away? That's a great question. I don't know.
Yeah, the waist-high water, it definitely looked waist-high in the video I saw. Now, Johnny said it wasn't as high at that time. Still, though, I don't know why you would walk through any amount of water where there's gators and snakes and everything, no current. It's just kind of stagnant water when that isn't necessary. If you're planning on doing what she said she was going to do, none of that is really necessary, especially if your concern is being able to be found easily.
Yeah. People made the comment that it is as Johnny Jacobs, not that he had anything to do with it, but if she were getting there via boat somehow, that's been speculated because the Lumber River runs all up and down there, and those are little tributaries and sloughs off to the side. So she was in one of the little sloughs. Johnny Jacobs made a mention of 2 other boaters and said, "Did you hear crying?" And they said, "No, we didn't hear crying, but we heard a gunshot." So people have asked, well, who were those boaters? And I'm like, I'm sure the deputies probably talked to them. They just smartly haven't come forward because look at what happened to this guy when he came forward.
Yeah. I read in one thing, and I don't know if this is confirmed, that it was a married couple.
Yeah. He said there's just 2 other people, and kind of you're commiserating out there because you're like, did you hear that? Am I hearing stuff?
No, if I'm fishing and I hear crying and then a gunshot and the crying stops, my mind is going to go to the worst possible scenario too. Yeah. And he also saw a kayaker and said, "Did you hear that?" And the kayaker was like, "Yeah." And so that's when the kayaker gets involved. Less than 2 hours after Micah's heartbreaking 911 call was made, another call came in. This time from a kayaker at the state park, shakily informing the operator that,
"I think I just found a body in the water down there."
Micah's body was discovered not far from where Jacobs found her belongings. The details of Jacob's story of how he came upon the bag and what happened after has changed a bit during interviews, causing some to speculate that he was involved in Micah's death. However, the fisherman remains adamant that he had nothing to do with it, telling interviewers,
"I did not do this. There's no way in the world I would harm anybody like that. Even my worst enemy, I would not do nothing like that. I was just here fishing."
He now, does the story change in a couple of interviews?
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't say changes as much as additional details are added or, but I honestly think he's just trying to tell a story and new stuff keeps popping up.
I was going to say, to me, it almost sounds more believable because if you came out with one story and you were like, at 3:03 p.m. this happened, unless you're like me or you, somebody that's like an anal retentive, like I heard, there's been times I've seen a car be weird and I'm like, 3:06 p.m., red Tesla stopped in front of my neighbor's house because I just want to have a present sense impression so it's admissible later. Like if there was a need for it, like this was my present sense of what happened. Not everybody is like me and wired this way. Most people are like recollecting naturally, and that's to me what it sounded like, that he's like, yeah, I found some stuff and it was about 2-3 minutes. I can't really be sure. Maybe it was longer, which to me sounds more believable than it was 4 minutes and 26 seconds and then sticking to that story over and over again. It's like he genuinely seems to be recalling it. The one thing that I did think was weird is his very first time he talked to anybody was May 7th, and he gave 4 or 5 interviews between the 7th and the 21st, and it wasn't until May 21st that he was like, and she had $500 of cash in her bag. He did not mention that. I listened to him speak, and I look at screenshots of what he posts on Facebook and comments and on his own page. Never did he mention the $500 until, and he goes, and I counted it, every bit of it got back. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if, you pick up a bag with cash in it and people are like, they're going to accuse me of stealing. There's so much cash in here. Mm-hmm. But also, why did she have $500 of cash with her? She paid $500 via debit card at the pawn shop. What was the $500 of cash for?
Yeah. He also, in one story, says he saw a cell phone and sunglasses laying on the bank and he didn't pick those up. He left them. And then in another story, he said he did pick them up and put them in the fanny pack and took all of it to the boat. In one story, he says he never looks in it. And then in another one, he's like, I looked in it and saw that it was her license and stuff. So, but honestly, I really do think he was just out there fishing and he's not used to something like this. And
yeah,
imagine, like we talk about, that ripple effect of trauma and stuff. That kayaker's life is forever changed. This guy's life, the guy who sold the gun to her at the pawn shop. Yeah. I saw somebody on YouTube be like, has anyone checked on him? And then people were like, that's so kind of you to think about him, because that is his image is everywhere now. He didn't, you know what I mean? It's going to be shown in court. And somebody was like, that's probably the last time she smiled, because he says something to her.
He made her laugh.
He made her laugh a little bit. So,
man,
but even during that footage, she looks very somber and distraught. But
and distracted
if you're
almost.
like, I'm buying a gun to prevent my estranged crazy husband from killing me, you're not going to be in the best mood, you know?
No.
I mean, I don't think it's indicative that like I'm about to go kill myself. I think it could be indicative that like I am so fucking tired.
Yeah, I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to have to shoot my ex-husband in the chest,
Right.
but I will if he comes at me. And so, yeah, you have this resigned, like, this is what it's come to. And you do a couple times, she's kind of staring off, and then he comes back up and says something to her, and she just kind of grins. You know, it's just being a friendly, a friendly customer service kind of guy. Mm-hmm. Man, I didn't think about that being the last time that she might have smiled. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I hadn't either until someone pointed it out in some comments, but those people should be checked on too. You know, I mean, everybody, it's impossible for everyone to reach out to everyone that may be affected, but that guy should know that it's completely okay if he's fucked up about this and to seek his own help, because that's a very heavy thing to know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially be about to be thrust possibly into the national spotlight. And the same with Johnny Jacobs, the fisherman. Every time he references her, he's like, this was a good woman, a godly woman. I've spoken to her family. They're getting done dirty. I just want to help. And so I hope that he doesn't get any more social media flack than he already has. And, people ripping him apart or whatever. It's like, also, you don't know, the more times people are demanding things from him, if later on a defense attorney is going to try to use that for reasonable doubt. So you might be helping JP or whoever perhaps maybe goes to trial for this by going, well, the fisherman story changed 5 times.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it perhaps just changed because he's, an unsophisticated party just kind of there fishing. He didn't expect to be a murder witness. No,
and he said he's gotten so many hateful things said to him on social media that he's thinking about hiring his own attorney because he feels like his name has been defamed at this point. And I mean, he's now associated with this case for the rest of his life. And that's not something unless it comes out, but I really don't think that he did anything untoward. I think he just happened to be there and happened to hear something and then found a bag. And anybody opens a bag, you see $500 in cash and stuff and no one around. I would be like, oh, this looks very suspicious, especially since I just heard crying and a gunshot.
Yeah, like, this is weird. And he's like, and then as soon as I get back to the dock, the law was there. And you're like, oh, yeah, you guys probably are looking for this.
Something happened,
Sinisterhood will be right back. You been on that Nutrafol? I've been on that Nutrafol game.
How's your hair feeling?
Well, I'll tell you what. Thank you very much. It's very shiny. I feel like I've shed a decreasing amount because I'm a shedder, or at least I was a shedder. And now I feel like I don't have to worry about like, oh, am I covered in my own hair as I walk out in public?
Right.
Of course there's a little bit of natural shedding here and there, but it definitely feels like it is decreased. And I thought, well, I'm gonna have to go get a trim soon because this is growing.
For real. My hair grows faster. It feels fuller and healthier. I feel like the shedding definitely has decreased as well. And I think it just looks better, It looks shinier, healthier, all of the things that you want your hair to look like.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement with over 1 million people seeing thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding.
Everyone's root causes of hair thinning are different, so a one-size-fits-all approach to hair growth doesn't cut it. That's why Nutrafol takes a whole-body approach to hair health, addressing the problems inside to help hair grow on the outside. Purchase online, no prescription required. Free shipping and automated deliveries ensure you'll never miss a day.
Get results you can run your fingers through. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code CREEPY.
Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and hairstylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code CREEPY.
That's Nutrafol.com, promo code CREEPY. Sinisterhood will be right back.
Conflicting accounts surrounding evidence at the scene and the location of Micah's body has raised even more questions. According to Micah's family, several ear witnesses at the park that day reported hearing 2 gunshots, not 1. In an interview with Law and Crime, Micah's father, Michael Francis, said that multiple bullets and shell casings were found at the scene. something he found extremely odd, especially given the fact that his daughter was trained on how to use a handgun. Similarly, Micah's body was found roughly 130 feet from the spent bullets. Anna Francis, Micah's sister, told news outlets that it appeared as if a log had been placed on top of her sister's body in the water, additional evidence proving Micah did not kill herself.
And yeah, Michael said she would not have had that many spent shell casings in a live round ejected because he said she knew if you're going to shoot the gun, have it prepared. So what would cause shell casings to come out like that? A struggle? I don't know.
I would also argue that if this was by her own hand and she had tried before and it hadn't gone right, that if you knew that, you would be extra diligent in making sure that like things are going to go right this time. So you would be checking your gun and like even more aware of like things that could go wrong and like doing it. I hate to say correctly, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like,
with her intent.
I think that's another sign that like, if her intent was to complete suicide and she was doing it the same way she had before and had already had the gun jam once before, you would take extra measures to make sure something like that didn't happen this time.
Yes. Extra measures that I think would not include a second shot being fired.
Yes. And, you know, a lot of this is the only people that are saying this are the Francis family. I'm not saying that it's not truthful. I think the Robeson County Sheriff's Department is holding a lot of information back. Michael said also that someone at the scene told him there was what looked to be a bullet hole in a tree nearby. Now it is a state park. People hunt. Who knows? That could be from something else. But the fact that she was found in water is very strange to me too, because again, like if she's wanting to be found, she's sharing her location, she says, so her family can find her. Why would you then purposely do that near the water and with the possibility of being swept downstream or something? The kayaker said when he originally pulled up and thought something was kind of going on, and she was kind of against a tree, and when the water kind of was rushing, he saw her foot bob up. So at least like a leg and a foot were under enough to where it wasn't immediately visible. And also Jacob said later when he circled back with the kayaker said, "You were right over there by her. You must have just missed her," which people are like, well, how could you not have seen her? I mean, there's a ton of water and trees and brush and stuff. And also he's got the bag now and he's worried about that. I don't think that him not seeing her means anything. I think it could have been overlooked.
Yeah, I don't know that he was, him not seeing her, if the kayaker had to say her foot bobbed up, then, and Anna said, you know, something was on top of her, a log or something to help sink her, that certainly would alleviate him from being under any suspicion. Like, oh, you didn't see it. It's like she was buried under something and I wasn't that close, versus the kayaker who was.
And putting someone in water would probably get rid of a lot of evidence.
It would absolutely destroy DNA evidence and other forensics.
As Micah's family grieved their unspeakable loss, insult was added to injury when JP sent a text to a group chat consisting of Micah's parents and siblings later that evening. Sent mere hours after her body had been discovered, the disgraced pastor wrote,
"This is what happens when you try to encourage someone to divorce the person they love and tell them they don't need medicine and that they're not ill when they are. Good job, Francis family."
This motherfucker. Just this text alone should get you time in prison.
Yes, yes.
I mean, regardless if you did it or not, you did. Regardless if you did it or not, I think he did. He says he doesn't. In my opinion,
based on the evidence.
How could anyone send something like this?
He's a fucking heartless monster.
Oh my
Everybody
God.
that still goes to his church, you're complicit. You're complicit, Solid Rock. I'm talking to you. Everybody, I don't care if he's on leave right now or whatever. The fact that anybody finds this shit out about their pastor and is like, well, I'm just being forgiving. I'm like, Jesus would shake your ass awake and go, what are you doing? This is not what I was talking about at all. I have been misquoted. The fact that you have the audacity and the heartlessness to send this, and I believe it was Sierra responded, fuck out of here with that. And I'm like, yes, ma'am. That is the right answer. Like, you did this. Go fuck yourself, sir. We all know. But the audacity. The audacity.
It's something else. Not just to call out the people that are still going, because his congregation went from 700 to 50, which I think is very telling. But if you're one of those 50, get the fuck out. Like, this guy
Take a
is
look
a
at
monster.
yourself.
Yeah, like you're being brainwashed. You are being potentially abused yourself. And even before this text, the shit he says up on that pulpit, I'm like,
so sexist and misogynistic.
So misogynistic. And he's like laughing about it. Like,
he's horrible.
Well, my wife and I, where, you know, she just goes from like a 0 to a 10 and gets all crazy. But, you know, then I forgive her after she apologizes and we're back to 100%. Everybody laughs. And I'm like, you are so fucking gross. You're laughing at this after he's very publicly shares her struggles with you as well.
Yeah, what in the 90s hack comic is this? Of like, women, am I right? It's fucking embarrassing. But he does it as a way to manipulate and control his wife and then also all the women in the congregation. That's why their husbands want to drag him there. Because guess what?
Yeah.
They all get controlled too. Yeah, it's very sick to misuse scripture in this way.
Yeah.
And then say,
And
good job,
least,
Francis family, to the grieving family of a dead woman.
And at least some of the people... at least one that I know of, because he admitted to it in an interview that attends there, is a convicted child sex predator. So, you know, I mean...
What are you doing there?
You gotta take a look at the company you keep. And if you're still going to this church when all of this has come out, and not just speculation, you now have proof that he admitted he put a nude photo of her online. He admitted he slashed her tires and used tracking devices. This is a text. It's a screenshot. Like, you can't lie about
forever.
that. So even if you don't think he killed her, he did, then...
In my opinion.
What...
in my opinion, based on evidence.
How can you excuse all this other behavior?
Yeah, it's,
you know what I mean.
It's egregious.
You shouldn't.
Yeah.
No, it's abusive and awful. And even if you think he didn't pull the trigger, he should be held accountable for all of these things. I'm talking specifically to the congregation. And if you're forgiving this type of behavior, shame on you.
Yeah, we also forgot all the kids he molested. So, according to his ex-wife's affidavit. So, there's not only, you know, he's disrespectful, he's also a sex predator, including to Micah. So,
and yes, he was grooming her from the age of 14.
Yeah.
And then married her at 18. Or she got married at 18 to another guy, but he was continuing to groom her. Grooming involves sexual interaction. He was 100% having sex with her as a minor.
he confessed to the elders of the church and his ex-wife. So we're not saying anything wild. And also, sue me for defamation, bitch. Let's get all those victims on the stand.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
I'd love it. I'd love it. Yeah, for sure. So he
Bring
wasn't
it
done,
on
though.
Discovery.
Yeah, that text wasn't, it's just the first of many horrible things he said.
After sending that message to Micah's family, JP preached his usual Sunday sermon on April 28th. He reserved the last few moments to ask parishioners to please continue giving money to the church and attending while he took time off. He briefly mentioned that Micah died and made a point to mention her mental health struggles. JP then asked attendees not to discuss anything. And we quoted the exact message in the last episode, but it's bananas. And that was the first thing I saw about this whole case was that. And I immediately was like, oh, this isn't what someone who is innocent that loves his wife says. This is insane.
Every comment was immediately like, Chris Watts, he did it.
Yeah,
Chad Daybell,
yeah.
it's giving Chris Watts. Like, we weren't the only people to watch it and go, that doesn't sit right. He later said, oh, I was in shock. But I think he was trying to control the narrative and trying to control the people in the congregation still. And still, after her death, trying to control her, of being like, it was self-induced. She had all those mental health problems. I talked about them publicly.
Imagine you find out your wife has died very tragically, horrifically. You send that text to her family around 10 p.m. that same night. And then the next morning, early in the morning, you get up and preach a sermon, never mention it. No one can tell from your attitude or body language that anything is off. How could anybody be capable of that?
It seems like psychopathic behavior.
Yeah,
I'm not an
he's
expert
a
in all that.
for sure.
But it's bizarre to see that, to be able to switch between, women talk so much. I have to let you know Micah she died and it was self-induced. Please don't talk about it and keep tithing though, because I'm going to take some time off, but I don't want to worry about not making money because, I launder money through this church. It's like, we don't know that yet, but the FBI will find out very shortly.
Well, yeah, based on the evidence at hand, we're going to say that. But yeah, to be able to compartmentalize such what for most people would be insurmountable grief. That not even you wouldn't be able to get out of bed, let alone go talk in front of a group of people about something, laughing and shit, cracking jokes, and then the last few minutes you're like, by the way, my wife killed herself last night. Don't talk about it. Please pay me money. Goodbye. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was weird. And he's not done yet.
No, I feel like that footage is going to be one of the main things I think that brings him down.
Certainly that, and I think all footage of him. I think we said, he'll between what Micah gathered and what he cannot shut up, it'll take care of itself.
Yes. In an interview with YouTuber Robbie Harvey, Micah's best friend Charlotte Korn relayed a strange phone call she had with JP the day after Micah died. Charlotte stated that JP called her as soon as he was out of preaching the sermon. Charlotte noted this was before JP saw Micah's body. Allegedly, JP asked how Charlotte was doing and whether she wanted further details of Micah's death. Charlotte agreed, and JP explained,
well, she was supposed to go to work, but instead she went and bought a gun and then drove up to Lumberton. I thought she was going to see you.
He paused. Charlotte's blood ran cold as she said, no, Micah had no plans to head north to visit Charlotte, who had moved from Myrtle Beach to Virginia. Charlotte said in the interview,
it honestly kind of sent a shiver down my spine because it just sounded like he was watching her.
When asked whether she believed that JP was tracking Micah the day she died, Charlotte said,
that's how it sounded. That's what it sounded like to me.
She added it was not surprising given how frequently JP tracked her and stalked her, both on his own and with the help of a PI. She said she would testify under oath to what she said if ever asked to at trial. This is pretty damning.
Bingo. Yeah, him going, oh, I thought she was going to see you as I watched her drive north.
Yeah.
So you were watching her and
you're either following her or you're watching a GPS. I don't know how trackers work. It shows you something of where she's going. But you knew she was going up there. How would you have known? How would you have known? I thought she was going to see you.
That's a weird statement. I think on the literal devil's advocate side, if I was a defense attorney, you go, oh, well, because he was told that she ended up in Lumberton. And so he thought, oh, well, maybe she stopped at Lumberton on the way. But the present tense of like, oh, I thought she was she's going. It's just like the way he said it and that phrasing. And I think Charlotte's going to be a bombshell key witness because he CC'd her on so many just absolute, again, abusive, horrific, abusive, terrible, absolutely terrible text messages. And he said, I'm copying Charlotte so she can see how bad you are or whatever to Micah. So it's a 3-way text chat with your best friend and her batshit husband who is sending repeated abusive messages. And you're just like, oh, I guess I'm just going to screenshot these all to tell the police eventually.
Yeah, you get added to a group chat. Next thing you know, your best friend's husband is just unleashing. It's just another thing that's going to hang himself. He is so narcissistic and stupid that, and just angry and abusive that he can't see the forest for the trees. Like he doesn't think, he's so in the moment. And like we talked in the last episode about when she was at the mechanics getting her car fixed because he had slashed her fucking tires, and he pulls up. And how does he know she's there? Because he's fucking tracking her. And there's video of him walking up to her car and yelling like you're in fucking high school. Like, wait until these pictures get posted on Facebook. And she's like, well, you're going to be in jail in a few hours. And just like the embarrassing cringe, he's just showing his ass. He can't hide it. That is so ingrained in him, that abusive nature. It is just constantly bubbling below the surface that he can mask it for a bit, but not always. And then it comes out and it's on video. Like, it's going to get played in court, my dude. Like, how are you going to explain all this shit away?
Yeah. Of him going
to people that aren't under your control because they're in your congregation.
Truly, yeah. Or people, his dad is about the only one that came out to defend him. So that's a good point. And I think we'll get into it in part 3 as far as lies versus reality. But having people like Charlotte, I think, are so vital to have that footage. And Micah herself documented so much as well, because he'll just be like, no, and you're like, yeah, man, we saw the video footage. So do you think that like I have eyes and ears? I saw it myself. Like,
it's wild that he thinks that he could just do this and there's no repercussions.
I'll put it in language he may understand that I learned from my Uncle Jerry. Don't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining.
There you go. The medical examiner released Micah's body to J.P. Miller on April 30th. When her grieving family asked to see her, J.P. told them the only way he would allow them to see Micah is if they first signed a certification of cremation, according to Fitz News. Micah's sister Sierra, along with her attorney, spoke with Ashley Banfield of News Nation. In the interview, Sierra claimed that not only were they forced into allowing Micah's body to be cremated, but that she and her family were informed that Micah's body was never tested to see if there was water in her lungs or gunpowder residue on her body. Similarly, neither a toxicology report nor an autopsy were performed, a decision made by the medical examiner many find questionable. Because Micah was cremated, there is no chance for a secondary autopsy to gather evidence and potentially help determine if foul play was involved.
Meanwhile, this whole week, JP was going out with his girlfriend, Susie, drinking at a bar and getting sloppy, and then had the audacity to tell the family, oh, you want to see her? Oh, sure, you can see her if you do what I say, which I would say South Carolina has a Safe Cremation Act. Part of that is that crematoriums, funeral homes, you have to sign an affidavit upon which you swear several things. One of the things that he signed himself and swore on it was that there was no pending divorce action. So he's liable for preemptively cremating her, in my opinion, under South Carolina law. And also he's liable for lying on a document, on a sworn document under South Carolina law. So the copy that he provided or whatever, like, oh, look, I signed this, whatever. So he had no rights, in my opinion, to even force them to do it. I think the funeral home is suspicious for listening to him. Like, understand, like, you got to do due diligence on your clients. Like, you have this guy saying, oh, this is my wife, and the family going, she filed for divorce. She didn't want him to be in charge of her. And him presenting a power of attorney. Powers of attorney cease when you die. So that's irrelevant. And also there's arguments about why she was she coerced and or tricked into signing that. So there's a lot of suspicion with the cremation and the speed with which he insisted there be a cremation.
That's what I'm saying. Why are you so eager to get a cremation? Why don't you want a burial? I mean, one could argue, oh, well, because of the nature of how she died. Well, it could be closed casket. But regardless, her family should be able to see her without having to do fuck all. That's their right to be able to see her. Yeah, if you watch interviews with the Francis family, apparently he'd be like, they would try to call the funeral home and say, well, we're going to come at this time. And they say, well, JP said you can only come between 2 and 3. That's when he's going to come and you can't. And you did it. I'm like, why is the funeral home letting this Yahoo decide anything? So, is it because he's the power of attorney? It doesn't matter. Your power of attorney ceases when you die. Under Texas law, and it's pretty much common law everywhere.
if there's some weird South Carolina thing. But I would say when trying to determine next of kin, and especially given that affidavit of cremation has a mention of a filed divorce action, which there absolutely was a filed divorce action. So this is, granted, a woman is dead, but I think it is extremely relevant to the cessation of any murder investigation when her now suspect husband, in my opinion, he's suspect, is forcing this cremation so quickly. He goes, well, that's when her memorial service was going to be that Sunday, so I had to get her cremated before it. Bitch, you're the one that planned the memorial service, so you cannot use that as an excuse. And he goes, well, bodies start to stink. You dumbass. They keep it in a fucking refrigerator. They're not just lying, unless you're the Dallas funeral home, which we covered. They're not just out in a hallway. She's in a fucking morgue. Like, what are you talking about?
No.
So the excuses of, well, her body was going to stink and I had to have a funeral. Like, shut up. No, you wanted her cremated. Why? We can all fill in the blanks.
As the Francis family entered the room to view Micah one last time, they were forced to focus on gathering evidence rather than grieving. With no autopsy performed, they aimed to collect as much evidence as possible to seek justice for Micah. They documented what her father described a law and crime as
defensive wounds
on her hands and arms, noting marks, scratches, and bruises that appeared to be a result from someone forcefully grabbing and holding her. These bruises were not visible in footage of Micah from the pawn shop. Her sister Anna asked the medical examiner if such bruises could result from law enforcement retrieving the body from the water. The ME explained that bruising cannot occur after the heart stops beating. This indicated the bruises were inflicted sometime between Micah's visit to the pawn shop and the discovery of her body, according to Anna's interview with Fitz News.
Yeah, Anna has said that, quote, there were definitely bruises on her hands. It's really sad to hear her described. She's like, we walk in the room with her and we can't even grieve. We had to go into fight mode because Robeson County was neglecting to investigate this. And we're like, we're her only hope. Like, hold her hand up, take pictures. And the only thing I could think of is I was like, somebody in her family's phone has those pictures on it. You open up your phone app.
He said it was the worst day of his life.
And that you're like, I love you so much, but I don't want to look at these, but like, I have to have them. Like, I have to do this for you. And he described it as bruise marks on her hand, as if you're watching us on YouTube, I'm kind of imitating it, but like your hand being forced, grabbed, held, almost as if you have a gun in your hand and they're forcing your hand, grabs and marks. And interesting that, Anna said, oh, well, maybe they drug her out of the water and grabbed her arms and they would have bruised her. And the ME's like, no, if she was already dead, that wasn't going to bruise her.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very tough to listen to her dad talking about that, saying it was the worst day of his life. And I can't imagine. And then, to have that. I mean, it's like so many other cases we've covered where the family is forced to be the advocate for the victim because the cops aren't doing their job. And like Ellen Greenberg, Ryan Ferguson, Ellen Greenberg's family had to go through all of the autopsy reports and everything. Seeing those pictures of your kid, it's always in your head. I don't know how you don't see it every day. Yeah. And to be able to go on, but they do it because no one else will. And the love for your kid is so strong, and your sister, that yes, this is horrible. No one wants to look at this. You don't ever want to see your loved one that way. But if it means the person that did this to her gets put behind bars, then it's worth it.
Yeah, it makes me think of Debbie Riddle and the Greenbergs for sure. Of like, I want to grieve you, but I have to take the ball and move it forward because I don't want you to, I don't want you to have died in pain.
Yeah, for sure. No, and many. I was watching that series on Netflix, I Am a Stalker, which it's very haunting and compelling because there's these firsthand interviews with people that are in prison for stalking, and the way they speak about it is just so cold and calculating. But one of the women on it that was being interviewed, her son was a victim. He happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And she said, I haven't been able to grieve because until the man who did it was put in prison, she couldn't really grieve because she was just gathering evidence every day and on the phone with people. And like, you can't even process your own feelings because you immediately have a job to do.
Yeah, and that's what Anna said. She said all the siblings have like things that they're good at. Like one of them's good at organizing people, so they were able to do like a meal train. One of them's good at paperwork, so they were doing that. One of them's good at this. So it's again, now you all have these little hats that you have to wear, and you're getting through the day not being able to fully grieve this huge gaping hole that's in your life. And just Anna talking about hearing the guttural cries of her mom that day that they had to go in there. She's like, it's a sound I'll never forget, because it was this ultimate pain of like, am I really signing this away? Am I signing her away to be cremated? And it's just not a position anybody should have to be put in.
No. On May 5th, 2024, 2 memorial services for Micah were held. At Solid Rock Church, JP held a memorial for the congregation. Strangely, though his voice was high-pitched, he never shed tears. One behavioral expert on News Nation said JP did not demonstrate the markers of a man in grief. Instead, saying JP displayed
all the classic cues of someone faking an emotion.
During the odd, rambling ceremony, he commented on Micah's body, saying,
"Imagine being married to that."
He also claimed to lay with her body 4 times after her death and tried to raise her from the dead. He stated he believed he did raise her when he saw a woman who looked like Micah with a matching tattoo at the mall. When he screamed out, it turned out to be her sister. Fucking what?
He's like, I had to get the chain. I had to get the chain fixed on my dog tag. So when I went to the mall, I saw a woman look just like Micah, same hair. The sisters all have matching band tattoos on their arm, like the family does. And she had the same tattoo as Micah. And I screamed out like it worked. Jesus, it worked. I raised her. And then she turned around and it was her sister. I'm like, you followed the sister to the mall, didn't you? Like, what are you doing? Or you saw the sister at the mall and you want to be like, Micah, is that you? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just so emotional. But the voice that he does is embarrassingly fake. He does not shed a tear. He doesn't grab his touch to dab his eyes, touch it at all. And that expert on News Nation was like, there's this thing that happens in your forehead that's like, it's not a purposeful thing that you can do, that they say they look for in people who are truly in grief, that it's this like inadvertent tensing of this muscle in the forehead that he called the grief muscle. And he said, watch his forehead the whole time. He's just like, I'm so sad. And his face is kind of trying to grumple up. And he's doing this like weird
Very
breaky
Murdoch
voice. Yes, it's weird. Alec Murdoch-y for sure. Yeah, of like weird faking. And I'm like, how often is this like worked in your life? Because it's pretty bad.
More than once, I imagine. Yeah. And then imagine being her sister at the mall and you've got him fucking yelling at you.
No, God, shit. Whoever, if he runs up and screams on you, you're allowed to hit him in the face. Like you, like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm already grieving. Get away from me. Go fix your dog tag chain, you loser.
First of all, yeah, and you're also wearing dog tags. And
you're not even in the military.
You're not in the military.
Operation Stolen Valor, embarrassing.
At the beach, the Francis family held their own ceremony honoring Micah. The event included dozens of people whose lives Micah touched. The public noted that the family chose to hold their ceremony at the same time as the Solid Rock Memorial.
That was kind of like everyone going, that was on purpose, right? And I think it was.
Yeah. And a ton of people showed up, and many from her church. So, you know, I mean, a lot of people had known what was going on. And I think those that have left are, a lot of them, I'm sure, like, oh, well, it happened. Our worst fear happened. And, you know, and they're luckily on the right side. They're going to support her. But it was a very sad but beautiful ceremony right on the beach, right by
where she lived.
Right by the ocean, yeah. That same day, Solid Rock Church announced that JP has been
released from his duties,
though his bio still remains on the Solid Rock website. His ex-wife, Allison, alleged in court filings that JP maintains 100% ownership and control over Solid Rock. Public records show he owns the land on which the church sits, making the nature of his, quote, release a subject of suspicion.
Plus, in the April 28th sermon, he's like, I'm going to take a leave for a while. So it's like, the church can't be like, we told him he can't come back. It's like, he said he was leaving anyway, and also he owns all of it.
Yeah. He said, it might be a few days, could be a few weeks. So, yeah. But if you own the land, it's on and all that, you're still getting money.
Few days, few weeks. I think it'll be 30 to life, but that's
I hope so. That's what I hope. On May 6th, Micah's sister Sierra filed a petition in probate court to become the special administrator of Micah's estate. She included an affidavit from their brother, Nate, who detailed JP's abuse of Micah, including physical violence, tracking her location, and hiring people to follow her. JP allegedly transferred assets out of his name by deeding their house to the church for less than fair value and transferring his interest in the Crocodile Rocks bar to one of his sons. The move was meant to defraud and deprive Micah of her fair share of assets, according to the filing. Sierra claimed Micah had collected digital evidence against JP, which was erased from her devices and cloud accounts during her involuntary commitment in February. JP also allegedly pretended to be Micah in digital communications with others on more than one occasion. After the filing, Sierra was appointed the administrator of Micah's estate. The affidavit garnered news attention, especially Sierra's damning statement.
Micah told me many times, quote, if I end up with a bullet in my head, it was not by me, it was JP.
Anyone with information regarding this case is asked to contact the FBI through your local field office. Micah's attorney, Regina Ward, is working with the family and accepting tips via her law office. You can send them via email to justiceformicahtips@gmail.com. There is also a GoFundMe to support the Francis family's legal efforts. We've included a link in our show notes via the episode description. We also strongly encourage everyone to contact the lawmakers in your own state to have coercive control bills on the books to prevent situations like this. So what do we think?
I think that the key to this, as far as keeping, so what do we think to this episode and our discussion of the day that she died and the evidence available there? I think a lot of digital evidence that we don't have access to are going to be the biggest keys in this case. I think the loose alibi of JP, which we'll talk about in part 2, you know, anything like that where we all have kind of been told, well, he said he wasn't there, so it's fine. You know, or
part 3, we'll talk about that.
I'm sorry, in part 3. But I think the big linchpin in this whole case is going to be Micah's phone, because there's more than just those few Google searches that we were shown by Robeson County Sheriff's Department. The photos of the Francis family and videos of Micah's body, analysis from independent, whether we see, some of the big names, not Henry Lee, who's the guy I'm thinking of, the German fella, Werner.
That's the documentarian.
Werner Spitz, that's his name.
Werner
Herzog is the documentarian, but Werner Spitz. If you get one of these like expert forensics saying like that is clearly the bruises of a person's hand. JP's phone, every single burner he's ever bought, every single his whole entire computer, his everything that he might have accessed digitally. I think you need to track down the PIs that have been helping him and say, first of all, we'll get into that my issue with the PIs I'll talk about in part 2. But I think getting any information of them, what did you provide him? And when did you provide him this information? Were you following her that day? Who is this guy in this video? Are we either going to rule him out or say, oh my gosh, that was the PI that was tracking her? And the key time, I think, is the time, what happened between Dick's pawn shop, why she ended up going north, and from the gas station to when she finally made the call. It's not exactly she pulled into the state park and immediately called. It's like, was someone there? Did she meet them? What happened in that? And I think the statements from everybody at the state park, not just Johnny Jacobs, which like, bless his heart, sir, I know you want to clear your name. Shut up. Stop talking. Stop talking in public interviews. Like, shut up. Go talk to the FBI, talk to law enforcement. But we don't want to have public impeachment evidence to go, well, he said 6 different things and give reasonable doubt to anybody that might stand trial for this. So I hope that everybody that does have something goes forward to the Justice for Micah Tips. You also just type in FBI office near me and say, hey, I have information on a active case, because the South Carolina division is apparently investigating. So, if you've been abused by JP Miller, something like anything that could help, I think sending it to Regina Ward, the family, and the FBI will help move
Yeah.
things along that I think the wheels are already in motion for.
Yeah, I agree that the time between the gas station and arriving at the state park, if she did, in fact, drive herself there, that's going to be key. Like, how did it go from the complete opposite direction of where you'd be going to work? Did she get a phone call? Had threats been made against her or her family or something? Or was she told to meet someone there? We'll also talk in part 3. A lot of web sleuths have done some of their own cell phone investigation and also running plates to cars, and not everything matches up. So there's also speculation that she didn't even have her phone.
Yes.
And that, or if when that call was made, she was not at the state park.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in part 3, as well as for the past 2 weeks now, JP has been either going live or posting videos. So speaking of impeachment evidence, we'll talk about what effect that might have on a future murder trial, as well as the timeline, I think, of when charges will be filed, an indictment, and then likely when a trial would occur and for what. And I probably have 15 different crimes, I think. And we'll talk about actions that fit the definition of the statute, who should be investigating and what's going on. But we'll save all that for part 3 because we've already given you so much to digest for this week.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say, and so what do we think, is I saw someone comment this or talk about this, and it got me thinking, like, what a narcissist he is, and how he never thought that this death would go viral.
Yeah.
And that's what's bringing him down. Much like Gabby Petito, much like Murdaugh, when these big cases like this go viral and you get way more people than just the FBI or law enforcement looking at it and talking about it, you're donezo, bro. And he's just such a narcissist. He didn't think that anybody would care that much about her. And he underestimated not only her family's love for her, but also the public, that people don't want to see someone get away with something like this, especially when such a bright young woman who deserved so much better is the victim in all of this.
And it's like all the good she was going to do, he robbed us all of that. But then all we do is say, oh, there's a million of us to take a little bit of what Micah was going to do. And like, you're done, son. You're done. You're done. You may have silenced her, maybe, in my opinion, based upon the evidence. But you can't silence the rest of us. And he has a very bad habit in these of going, these like so-called web sleuths. Why don't you ask Paul Flores what happens when a podcaster looks at your case? Ask Paul Flores how that went. Oh my God, you can't. He's in jail for life. And he got stabbed in jail. So good luck with that is all I'm saying. He keeps just being like, these people on the internet. I'm like, the people on the internet send people to jail all the time, bud.
Oh, yeah.
You should be afraid. You should be afraid of all of us.
Yes. Yeah. And I think he will see his day in court. And hopefully by the time we do bring you part 3 next week, maybe we have even some more stuff to add about charges being filed and arrests
Fingers
being
crossed.
made. This episode of Sinisterhood is made possible with the help of our amazing patrons.
If you're interested in supporting the show, consider joining our Patreon. You'll get access to ad-free regular episodes, weekly bonus content, you're able to vote on episode topics, join our monthly live streams, and more.
Keep it creepy.
Mwahaha.